So let's go ahead and welcome our panelists. We'll let them get on camera as I read their bios, and there's Claire, and we'll start with her. Claire Serta is joining us from Nevada, where she's currently works with the Nevada Gear Up program. Prior to starting with Gear Up, Claire worked for 2.5 years with the Nevada Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training and in the construction industry as a project administrator. So she has got lots of mad administration skills that she brings to her job. So welcome, Claire. And Claire is joined by Don Cooper, who is Assistant Vice Chancellor of College Access Initiatives at the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia. She serves as Principal Investigator and Project Director for Georgia's first ever Gear Up Georgia grant. At the University System of Georgia, Dawn provides leadership and support for a variety of programs, including the Summer Program for Youth in Foster Care, Early College Initiative, FAFSA Task Force, and several other state Georgia efforts to increase college access and success to under-resourced students and families. I think maybe I need to give Marcus the ability to join video. Let's see if we can get him on while we do an introduction of him. We've also got Dr. Marcus Jackson there with us now on screen. Welcome. Dr. Jackson is an internationally recognized educator, author, and expert in curriculum, instruction, and school administration. His 20-year career is distinguished by increased student achievement and school improvement while serving as a principal at all levels, director of curriculum and instruction, chief academic officer, chief of secondary schools, and chief of student services. He's also served as an adjunct professor at Clark Atlanta University. He's received several awards, including Teacher of the Year, the Early Leaders in Education Award, Principal of the Year, the Community Service Award, and most recently, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drum Major for Justice Excellence in Education Award. So we've got three remarkable educators with us today. And again, we're excited to hear their experiences with Student Success Agency and hear some of the stories that they have to share. Just quickly, before we get into that, I want to give just a little background so we're all centered on Student Success Agency. I think many of you are familiar with them and the work that they do, but Student Success Agency pairs students with near-peer mentors that we call agents. And students can connect with these agents anytime, anywhere using secure text messaging. Agents are there to provide academic support, social and emotional support, mental health connections to tutoring, guidance on everything from college applications to FAFSA applications to just generally being there as support for students. And usually in off hours when educators aren't available, when parents and family members might not be available, the agents are there really to be on call for students and help them in the ways that they need to be successful. So agents are really an extension of the work that Gear Up and districts and educators do and helps expand their capacity to provide that one-on-one personalized support to students and help them navigate the journey that is middle and high school as they head towards post-secondary engagements, whether that's college or military or the workforce. So that's just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, but we want to hear directly from Dawn, Claire, and Marcus about how they've partnered with Student Success Agency, the impact that that's had on student well-being, academic achievement, and those post-secondary outcomes. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's our agenda of what we're hoping to achieve today, and I think we're ready to dive in and get going. So, Dawn, let's go ahead and get started with you and have you just paint a picture for us of what it's like to have Student Success Agency as part of your student support team, and what were some of the reasons that you decided to partner with Student Success Agency, and how does that partnership look on a day-to-day basis? That's a big question. You can get us started.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Emily, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you all for joining as well. Really happy to have the opportunity to share some good things about SSA. So this was our first Gear Up State grant, as mentioned earlier. And while we were so lucky to have the benefit of hearing about best practices from Gear Up directors and program coordinators across the country, when we were looking for a mentoring initiative, I had a chance to speak with several Gear Up staff about Student Success Agency, and it was really important for us to work with someone who had a reputation of excellence among the Gear Up community, but also having the capacity to serve, large numbers of students at one time. That was really important. Also, given that, security is always an issue, and I was very pleased to know that SSA has wonderful security protocols in place. Excellent job of screening those agents and also making sure that they, whenever available, were able to match students up with other agents from similar backgrounds whenever that was available, and oftentimes it happened that some of those agents were students from Georgia or in college in Georgia, which was really great when that happened. And so those things were really important because there's lots of research out there about the importance of mentoring, but making sure that you have the right fit is truly a primary concern, so that that student can connect with that mentor as well. And the staff has also just been absolutely amazing to work with, very accommodating. We have a lot of services that we have to provide with Gear Up, and so it's important to have staff that's accommodating, but also mentors that do a really excellent job and care about the students.
That's great. About how many students are connected with agents?
So we have at this point, we're in our 8th year, so our students are in their 1st year of college. But
Mm,
at the peak of our interaction, we probably had around
wow.
1,200 to 1,300 students that were connected with agents. And many of them actually continued in their 1st year of college, which we really weren't sure. We gave the students an option to decide if you want to, you can. And many of them were like, "Of course we do. I love my agent."
Yeah.
And some of them had been with the same agent, not many, but with the same agent since they were like in the 7th and 8th grade. So that was a long-standing mentoring opportunity that I don't really see them being able to have the way that they did if it was not for our partnership with SSA.
Yeah, those bonds are deep. When those agent connections click, they're strong. Yeah, that's great. Claire, do you wanna, give us a little picture of what things are like in Nevada
Yeah,
besides the
yeah.
snow?
So I'm here in Nevada, we get a lot of snow. Um, so our grant, again, we are a state grant as well. This is, I believe, the 3rd or the 4th state grant that Nevada has received. So we're very familiar with Gear Up here in Nevada. We love it. We want to continue to get this grant. So our we have quite a variety of schools and districts that we serve. 2 of our districts are pretty rural, one of them being extremely rural. And our third district is the metropolis of Clark County. It's Las Vegas, and so we actually serve about 9,000 students right now. SSA is connected with probably 80% of those students. So large numbers here in Nevada for us to connect with SSA. And our biggest school has about 3,000 students, a little over 3,000 students. And that school has 2 staff members, right, on campus that are there to serve those 3,000 students. So the biggest thing for us in Nevada, the biggest reason for us to utilize SSA is to just bridge that gap and create an ease of access for our students, because as phenomenal as our staff are at servicing our students and connecting with them as much as they can, there's only 2 of them. And so in our larger schools, really what SSA does for us is just allow these students to have reliable access to the help that and support that they need, right? As Dawn said, or Emily, maybe you said it, outside of regular hours, right? When we all go home at night, these agents are available, right? When these students are sitting at home in bed at night thinking about all the questions of the day, that agent is there for them at that time when they need it, right? Not the next morning when they've forgotten half the thoughts they had the night before. So for us, it's really just um, that ability for our students to get help whenever and wherever they need. And SSA has done that tenfold. They're phenomenal for us too in reporting back all that data for us. We get monthly updates on all of those meetings and interactions that our students have with their agents. And it's truly incredible for us to see the numbers and the students that are connecting with agents when our staff just isn't really able to make that connection. And they also, I think, encourage, we focus very highly on student initiated interactions, right? Teachers and educators can reach out to student until they're blue in the face, and it doesn't always hit. So with SSA, we focused a lot on looking at the numbers of students that are initiating those interactions and feeling empowered enough to reach out to someone that they view as, an adult, and give them a safe space to break that barrier of, I'm too nervous to even ask this question, right? The agents give them that sort of grace to ask any question they need in a really non-confrontational way of a text message. And it's really just improved their overall ability to voice for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, both, that there are not enough educators in the world to serve the needs of all the students. So that example is so poignant. I know for everybody joining today to be able to expand the capacity of what your educators try so hard to do, but then also that near peer where it is someone who's older than them, who does have a little more life experience, but maybe doesn't have quite some of those barriers that a full-blown adult educator may have when asking those questions. So thank you for that. Marcus, tell us how things are looking in your world with student success agents.
Yes, I'm actually here in Lancaster, Texas. Our school district is a pretty small school district, a one high school district. We only have 7,052 students. Our connection with Student Success Agency was the perfect timing. I took this position here right out of COVID, and it was the perfect time. Even though I came in as the chief academic officer, my main focus was always been the affective domain. I'm worrying about how our kids feeling, how our teachers are feeling, how our principals are feeling. So that connectivity to one another is so important, not only to adults, but to kids. And we put some major mental health initiatives in place, and Student Success Agency was a part of it. We started off with our 8th graders. Those 8th graders moved to 9th graders. And so now we have an 8th grade cohort, a 9th grade cohort, and a 10th grade cohort, with next year moving into our 11th grade cohort. We're actually serving close to 1,500 students. And we have done some phenomenal things as it relates to improving outcomes and making connections with the agents and the agents and the students. There are 4 critical areas I've been able to see from students. Our students now have an outlet. Our students now have a connection with someone other than someone from the school and from their home. Our students have an ear. They have an ear of someone who's genuinely concerned, and most importantly, they have a voice. They can talk to someone all the time, and it's right here on that cell phone, which is something that they have in their hand all the time. And we've been able to better serve them by them speaking to the agents. I think that's a major contributory factor as to why we had some of the highest test scores as it relates to growth coming out of COVID. In addition to that, the connection the agents have been able to make with our students have improved the relationship with our teachers. And we're just able to run our organization more smoothly because of the connection we have with our agents.
That's great. Yeah. And thank you for bringing up COVID. It's all there all the time. The impact of that on students' mental health and, just engagement in school. So yeah, having that connection to be able to talk with someone about those feelings and those struggles and to get connected is helpful. Dawn, did you want to interject on that?
I did just briefly,
Yeah.
and thank you for bringing that up about the pandemic because, we were fortunate enough to have SSA on board before the pandemic. It was really one of the first virtual services, really robust virtual services that we had put in place. And so, because they were already there, we were engaged. We'd always done so many kickoffs, the kids were already using it. It was one of the most seamless ways that we were able to stay connected with
Yeah.
students during the pandemic. And we had one district that was a holdout with SSA. They just had different reasons, but immediately they were like, We're ready. We're ready now. We want." We're ready. We're so worried about our students, and so it was just really amazing the contrast in the connectivity that they were able to have once they got on board with SSA with us. So I was just very thankful that SSA had us ahead of the curve when it came down to staying connected with our students, even if we weren't able to see them face to face.
Yeah, we all heard so many stories in COVID of just lost students where just nobody could get in touch with them or know what was going on. So yeah, having that extra support of the agents to be there and keep track of students and keep them as engaged as possible during that time. I'm sure that was hugely valuable. Claire, did you want to interject? I wasn't sure before we move on. Okay. All right.
They
Well,
said it all perfectly.
okay. Well, let's move on. We wanted to get a little bit more. You all touched on this a bit, but a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of agents interacting with students. In some examples of students that you've had, different areas that they've worked with their agents on and how that's been beneficial. So, Claire, do you want to maybe get us started on that storytelling?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Gear Up now for almost 4 years, and so I've seen a lot of success stories. So this was hard for me to pick one. um, but the story that resonates with me the most is a story of a student that I actually was fortunate enough to meet in person as a state grant admin. I don't get into the schools as often as I wish that I could. But this past fall, we did go down for some on-site monitoring, and just in the office with some of our staff members, a student came in, and he was talking to our staff member while we just sort of sat back and watched the magic happen, and talking about this business that he had started and that his SSA agent had helped him get off the ground and get going, and all about the success of it and where it was headed and what he was so excited for. And at the end of the conversation, I had asked him, oh yeah, what grade are you in? And he said he was a freshman. And for me, to see a student so young already feeling empowered enough to start his own business really resonated with me. I was someone who started college and didn't finish, figured out very quickly that it was not the route for me. And while I know there's an incredible value in that route, there are other routes as well, right? And not everyone is meant to go get a 4-year degree or move on into grad school. Some people just have that entrepreneur mindset. And so I remember, it put me back when in my high school days where I thought, oh, that would be a great business. That would be so great, but I had nowhere to turn. I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't have a teacher that I was close enough with to ask. And, my parents, as loving, as supporting as they were not business minded folk. They were, little state employees who I loved and adored. But I had a different mindset and I didn't have that resource to turn to support me in that. And our students do now. SSA has given our students that just empowerment to trust themselves and to believe in themselves and the ideas that they have, and remind them of their value in that, and whatever life path they choose they can be successful in. And I truly envy those students that have that, because I didn't, and so many of us didn't, I think. And so SSA really gave him that opening to the rest of his life, right? And what that looks like for him. And now he gets to make the decision, because he started so young. Do I want to go straight into my business? Do I want to go to college for business school? Do I want to, all these things that he can now work with his agent over the next 4 years. And like Don said in the previous question, building that connection is rare. It's very special that these students get to match with an agent and continue with them for years to come, because those are the connections that really become the most fruitful. And so yeah, that's really the story that resonates with me, is just the fact that these kids can do anything with the help of their agent.
Yeah, that empowering that you all touched on earlier, and giving them voice, giving them giving them a place to really express themselves and bounce ideas off people and feel safe in doing that is so invaluable. And Donna or Claire, I agree with you. I wish I'd had that when I was in middle and high school. Let's see, Marcus, do you want to share a student story?
Well, I actually have three, but
Go for it.
there's actually three actually into one. And praise God for the Student Success Agency, because those three that I'm actually speaking about were suicides we were able to intercept. And this actually occurred over the weekend when there's no school, there's no one to talk to. And we actually have a hotline, and we have an internal framework with our social emotional counselors and our outside resources who we can contact with immediately if our students are in danger. Yes, everybody has the hotline. Yes, everybody knows who to call in the city if you're having some mental health problems. But imagine if you had someone who you were very, very close to, who you gave that ear, you had a voice to, that gave you an outlet to be able to speak with, and that has created an environment where you're comfortable and you're actually safe. And so those three, there were three separate times here in our school district, two happening in the first year, where an agent intercepted, and a student reached out and said, "Hey, that's it for me. I can't go on anymore." And during that particular time, they were talking to the student, but at the same time, simultaneously contacting us here at the district level, which that calls actually come to me. I'm contacting my social emotional counselors. They're calling the home to see if the child alone, where the child is at. And if they don't get a phone call, we're actually going over there. That's our protocol. And we've been able to actually literally intercept 3 suicides, and actually catch students who are actually home alone sometime with nothing to eat over the weekend. I know you asked for one, but I had to put those examples
Yeah.
in there because these are happening on the weekends. Who are the students supposed to talk to? Yes, you have the counselor during the week, the social worker during the week, your favorite teacher during the week, but what about on Saturdays and Sundays? And the agents are available to our students all the time. And those are some examples on how the Student Success Agency have literally saved lives.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And we all know that's just so needed right now, just with increases of depression and anxiety amongst young people. So, yeah, having that just
And if I
complete
can jump in for
wraparound.
a quick second, and when we're talking
Yeah.
about suicides, these are coming from our high flying students.
Mm.
Average grade point average 3.4 and below. The kids are playing in the band, they're on the track team, then several CTE programs. These are our kids that nobody usually talk to at school because they're doing everything that they're supposed to do. So where do I go when I have all these troubles and issues that that's just running around in my head. I have an agent right here that I can actually speak to.
And I think that's such a good point too, because again, when we're also strapped on resources, the children who are going to get our time are the ones, you know, who have the glaring issues that need the support. And there's so much going on in the background that the agents can be aware of and help bring to light and get the support and services to those students that are needed. So thank you for sharing those stories, because those were important and powerful ones. Claire, did you wanted to chime in on that?
I really just wanted to sort of drive home the importance of it. And I'm so glad that you brought it up, Dr. Jackson, because it's something that in every month when we get our reports from SSA and we have our meetings with them, they go through all the stats. And that is a stat that, while it can be hard to look at, is just so incredibly valuable to see, like you said, the exact number of literal lives that these agents have saved every single month. And I think that we can all relate to post-COVID and the difference in our students, right? After what they went through being at home and being virtual, coming back, so much of their attitude and demeanor changed. And it was such a struggle for them to readjust, that having these people there as a safe space it really truly was invaluable. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing that up as an example, because it's an incredible part of what SSA does.
Yeah, extremely powerful. So yeah, thank you again, Dr. Jackson, for highlighting those stories. Dawn, what comes to your mind in terms of agents supporting students?
Well, I definitely like to echo Dr. Jackson and Claire. We've had several of those incidents and reports that have occurred, and while I wish that they were rare, in many ways, I am very thankful and grateful that the agents were there to be able to assist the students and alert. The chain of communication to me is so thorough and it's so immediate. There's a sense of urgency. And if they don't hear back from anyone in that chain right away to ensure that some connection has been made with that student, they follow up again. And with Gear Up, the school district is included in the communication, as they should be, obviously, as the first line, and we are a second tier as well, and we're copied on everything, but they want to make sure that we're informed. And so I was just very thankful for that. Because we were able to also follow up with our district partners to make sure that, hey, we saw that SSA had not heard back from you all about the student. And so then they were able to share, yes, they just hadn't had a chance to let SSA know because they jumped right into the crisis mode with the student and their families. So it was just great that the flow of communication was there the way that it was in those instances where not only students may hurt themselves, but also potentially hurting someone else, another student, because we had issues where the student opened up about that. But the one in particular for me was the student who was actually experiencing some abuse in the home. And they had not opened up to anyone about it except for their agent. So everyone was shocked. And it was a high flyer, as you mentioned, Dr. Jackson. So no one had a clue that this student was experiencing those issues. And then because of that, there were also thoughts and talk of suicide because they could not figure out how to continue to exist in that environment that they were in. And so we were able to get them connected with help with the Department of Family and Children's Services. Everyone acted with the urgency that was required for that incident. And now that student, I cannot tell you how amazing that student is doing right now on campus as a second year student in college. That student is a leader on their campus. They served as one of our Gear Up ambassadors who actually started a Gear Up club on their campus. They're supporting other Gear Up college students and other students on their campus. Just truly an amazing success story. But if I don't know what would have happened if that SSA agent had not been able to have that student have the relationship where the student was comfortable with opening
Yep.
up about that issue and able to get the confidence to actually share that information, but also be able to be the resilient help to build the resilience and the confidence to continue on past that incredible obstacle, and still be able to reach for success the way that that student has been doing. So it's overwhelming when you think about it, because I don't know of any other service that we provide that is able to have that kind of support on a social and emotional level, as well as academic and exposure and motivation, talking about careers in college and all of that sort of looped into one service, is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I think that just highlights again the students are human. All of those things are going to impact how they show up at school, how they can learn, what they go on to do after graduation. So being able to, as an organization, provide that complete support for students to be able to be successful. And also to your point, Dawn, of yes, there was the moment of crisis and everyone was able to react and respond, but then there's the recovery from that crisis. How do we move forward? And having that agent there as part of the overall support network for that student. And yeah, you illustrated so beautifully how that then ended up to be a real success story. And it could have gone a different way, sadly. So that's those were some very powerful stories from all of you. Thank you. I think really do illustrate the importance of students having someone that they can count on and that they can get to when the time is right for them. So that's great. Marcus, let's switch gears and maybe have you share a little bit. We've talked a lot about students and we want to go on talking about students, but also wanted to touch on some of the things that you mentioned in terms of the agent was talking to the student, but then they also were interacting with you as educators. So giving us a little background on how agents interact and collaborate with your team and your educators, and then also how the Student Success Agency team themselves are providing data and information that helps you make decisions and move forward.
Yes, as Chief of Student Services, our motto is every need of every child, every day. Uh, that's a monumental task to meet every need of every child every day. And the SSA actually helps assist us with that. Of course, we get the monthly reports. And once those monthly reports come out, we're able to see what are some of our strengths, our weaknesses, what are some of our area of needs, how many minutes, et cetera. But way before the reports come out, we're able to get a gauge of actually what's going on in real time in a couple of areas, socially, emotionally. I gave you the example with the suicide piece. Usually when we get things on the radar like that, we will actually give questions or things to our agents to maybe ask our students to get a gauge of actually what's going on, especially after COVID, when no one was doing well, including the teachers, which of course we felt the pain of that during a great resignation where 2.6 million left the profession. So imagine how the kids were actually feeling. So those are two major areas, and trying to figure out what barriers and having access to them every day where you can get the alerts. Dr. Jackson, you may need to check on this particular child. Once we've actually done that, once we've actually done that, that's a radar for me on my end to actually say, hold on, we've had about 3 calls today from 3 different schools dealing with the same issue. Maybe this is something that's going on within our schools, and we put that on the radar for our counselors to have in small group sessions to talk about during their school in real time. Remember, I told you I operate from the affective domain. I go to the child first. I truly believe that if you take care of the people, points and percentages that we want so bad will take care of itself. So when I get information like that from 3 different sources in regards to an issue we actually having at 3 different schools. It's probably going on and something that's being thought about within our district because our kids are communicating right here with each other. And those are some examples, specifically from a counseling perspective, where I get these messages from agency. I find a common thread that's going on throughout the district. And I'm like, hold on, let's pause for a second and let's focus on these issues. And most of the time, I get those calls during the weekend, like I did with the suicide. And that actually gauges me on what I need to focus on during that week.
Yeah, that kind of early warning coming from the agents and being able to bubble some stuff up before it becomes a bigger issue. That's super valuable. Claire, do you want to chime in on that aspect?
Yeah. So, in my role, I don't have as much direct contact with agents per se as I do with some of the SSA admin. We meet with them regularly every single month with occasional me emailing Leanna about all the questions I have, random meetings. But so for the most part, all of the collaboration that we do, that my team does, is with those admin staff, Michael, EJ, Leanna, Becky, and we have worked so closely with them over the last few years that they feel more like friends than vendors. But the information that they share with us is consistently used and given back to our staff, in things like, this month we had way more students needing algebra tutoring, right? So we send that back to our staff and say, okay, hey, SSA is telling us, all these students are struggling in algebra. Maybe you can check in with the algebra teachers and find out, what's going on, why there's such a big struggle right now, what's being taught that they might need a little extra on. And that allows the teachers to pull back and say, oh, I didn't know that my students were having these struggles because they didn't come to me for it. So think little things like that, right? Little day-to-day things like that is information that we use regularly. But also things like, just getting our students involved. SSA comes in and does these kickoff events at all of our schools and gets the students excited, and they're young and they're using music, and it's this incredibly engaging event where we will look at the amount of students that are signed up for Gear Up before these events versus the amount of students that sign up after them, and just watch those numbers skyrocket. And that's real, hard data that we can see, that it's not just word of mouth about how great SSA is. It's these real numbers of the students that they are impacting. And not only students, but families. We have had SSA come in and do and help us host parent and family engagement events, FAFSA and financial aid stuff, because we all know that the real work starts at home. And having these families feel more informed is just a simple way to get that information funneled to students and from more than one ear, right? So for us, it's just looking at the reports that they give us every month, reaching out when we need additional data. They're always willing to meet with us when we have questions about what's happening with our students and give more information for us to use. So we use them for everything.
And they want you to.
Yes, they do. They
really
do.
are there as partners, the whole student success agency team.
Yeah,
not just the agents, but
and I think it really just goes to show that SSA is so much more than just a texting service for students, right? They are so much more than that. And they're help for not only students, but staff and schools and district and state level assistance and support, truly.
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership. I think that's really the foundation of everything. Partnerships with students and the agents, partnerships with student success agency and your organization to what are your goals? What are your issues? How are we going to help you achieve these? So very collaborative relationship. Dawn, how is that relationship for you in your work?
It's been great. It has really been great. I mean, as we all know, if you work with education, data is very important, and not only being able to collect that information, but also being able to use it to inform our practice, how we move forward with SSA and other things that we do as well. And you obviously have certain reports that you have to submit to the federal government and to your also the agency and organization that you work with regards to how are we implementing services? How are the funds being spent? How many students are taking advantage of these services? And to Claire's point, even down to the kickoffs, to be able to see the numbers of students who've signed up before and then after one of those incredibly motivating experiences that students have at those kickoffs, it helps us for other districts and schools who decide they want to come on board, we have a best practice that we can share, and we have the data to back it up that if you do a kickoff, you're much more likely to get more students engaged and to understand the importance of the service, but also get motivated from the stories that are being told at those motivational kickoffs. In addition to collecting those data for our reports, we also do our own evaluation and studies on the work that we do with Gear Up as a whole. The last one that we did on the class of 2022 cohort, we were looking at how our Gear Up activities correlated with our students who enroll in college. And so there were 5 of our services that stood out that were positively correlated with students. They're much more likely to go to college if they participated in those 5 services. College visits was one, financial aid counseling, summer programs, test prep, all very positive associations. But the highest effect size was mentoring. And we do have another program that we do some mentoring with, but the overwhelming majority of our students who participate in mentoring have SSA agents. And so we were able to see that that is probably the highest statistically relevant service that we have with regards to it being positively correlated with student enrollment in college, both immediately and after 1 year. And the other blessing that we found in this is that the effect participation increased among students that we have who experience homelessness, as well as students who have English as a second language students as well. So the impact that's there, and we wouldn't be able to know that if we weren't getting those reports from SSA on a monthly basis that showed us how many students participated, and not only just how many participated, but how many minutes were they spending talking to those agents? Or how long was the communication? Because all of that was very relevant as we were assessing that data on the usage. We not only looked at how many times, but how long were the students spending in those communications. And that's why mentoring was able to rise to the top of all of those other services that we provide, all very excellent and relevant services. But mentoring rose to the top. And so that is no doubt due to the service that we're being provided in SSA. And we would not be able to tell that story without those data that they provide. So very appreciative of the efforts. And to Claire's point, also, those few times where we were able to work with them face to face have also been pretty awesome. Not only the camp opportunities that they have provided in the past for our students to, participate in camps and possibly meet some of those agents in person, but we've also had a few of our own events that SSA agents have been able to come to and serve as mentors, chaperones, those sorts of things as well. And some of the students did get a chance to meet their agent for the first time face to face, which is I can't even describe to you what experiencing that, seeing the students experience that has done for them as well. So very thankful for the attention that they paid to the data they provide.
Thank you. That was super helpful. And that actually it touched on a question that one of our participants asked about kind of quantifying the impact. So I wonder, Dr. Jackson, if you are doing anything there in Lancaster in terms of correlating SSA data to outcomes with students. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yes, we actually have condensed it to three major areas we focused on: attendance, behavior, and academics. And with those agents, we actually look and actually take a deep look into how the agency is positively affecting those students in those three areas. And we've had some great results thus far. We had a few seniors that actually was involved with an agent just because of their brother was involved, had an agent himself, and that was pretty cool. And so every now and then, the spirit, everybody carries the spirit of VJ within your organization. So that energy, that excitement, that enthusiasm was actually even able to rub off on a senior that I worked with last year because he had contact with his agent. And of course, our school district, we've had 100% graduation rate the past 2 years, which has actually been great. And that is some of the way we actually track it from a data standpoint. Attendance from those students who have agent improved, the academic improved, and also definitely behavior referrals have actually decreased significantly as well.
That's
And
amazing.
currently, right now, with those current results I've actually seen, I've actually just spoke with Dr. Matthews, who's our principal at our alternative program. So what we've actually done within our district, for every office referral that we receive on a student for disrespectful behavior, chronic outbursts, and things of that nature, it'll be mandatory that child now has an agent. For every child that's actually admitted into DAEP or alternative school, that child, the enrollment process, that child must have an agent. So we're actually trying to be proactive as opposed to reactive. We open up the program and have the kickoff for everybody, but we actually making it a part of our restorative practices as well, because if you dig deep down inside, many of our students don't have that outlet, they don't have that ear, and they don't have that voice. And if you give a kid those three things, an outlet, an ear, and a voice, the skies are the limit. And so we're trying to be proactive and reactive and restorative as well.
I think I need a banner that that says that about the ear and the outlet. I think that's those connections are so important, and they make such a difference in a student's journey. So I love that you're taking that proactive approach with it. Well, our time is flying by. So we did address that one question from an attendee, but before we get to some more questions, just wanted to kind of wrap up with, again, some of our audience may be considering partnering with Student Success Agency and exploring what that might look like for them. And wanted to ask the three of you what advice you might give to folks exploring that kind of partnership. Dawn, do you want to kick us off with that?
I would just make sure that as districts or Gear Up grants or nonprofits, other organizations are looking at that, how do we make the decision to jump on board with any service, including SSA? I would say, for one, look at the data, look at the data that is being provided, look at the research that's been done on mentoring and the effect that it has on students as well. And also just think about, do you have another resource that's available to you that can provide, research, data-driven results with regards to students and their success? Do they have a record? Do they have a track record of success? Do they have organizations that can speak to the success that they've already had with those students? And do you have a way to connect students with the near peers, positive near peers as well? Because it's not always positive when students are connecting with people that they're close to age. And so we can speak all day to students. Our staff can speak all day to students and share what is right, what's the path, what you need to do to be successful. But hearing it from someone that is close to their age, and it's also, just to quote one of my favorite new hip hop artists that's out right now, his name is D1, who can be real, righteous, and relevant with these students, the relevance of I'm going through this experience not too long ago. So please understand that this is the right thing to do. To try to stay positive as well, motivational, and being just very real with them about that. And we do try as adults, but we can't deliver that message the same way someone who is close to the age of that student can do, and have the opportunity to not just be a one-off, to be a consistent space in the students' lives, and sometimes even more consistent than staff. You know, we obviously staff turnover is an issue in our schools and our organizations and our universities as well. But these are students and they're well trained and they're very focused with the work that they do. And I'm having the opportunity to meet some of these agents in person. I can see why the students connect. So, you know, before you make the decision, you know, look at the data, talk to those folks who have had that experience, and then really figure out, is there another service out there like this that you have access to for this number of students to reduce the staff student ratio that you have in place, to Claire's point, and make the best decision for yourself and your program and for your students.
Thank you, Dawn. That was wonderful information for folks. Claire, how about you?
Yeah, just sort of really going off of what Dawn had said, I think I would challenge you to find another resource that could provide the same things that SSA provides truly. And I agree with her, right? Look at the data that they show. They have proven time and time again that what they do works. And all three of us here will testify to that as we have during this webinar. The other piece of advice that I would give is, to really talk to SSA, to not be afraid to ask them the hard questions, right? It is a cost, right? And we all know in grants we're limited and we have to be creative with our funding in order to serve our students best. But this is a cost that's worth every penny, in my opinion. And I think that the best advice I can give is to truly encourage you to meet SSA, set up meetings with not only the admin, but ask that they invite agents so that you can speak to some of the agents that are, on the ground with your students, and speak to the heads of this company that have the passion for it. If you sit down in a conversation with Michael and EJ and ask them why they do what they do, I can promise you'll leave the meeting ready to sign with them, because what they do comes from their heart and they truly care about the students. And you're not going to find another service that cares the way that they do. So my advice, if you are on the fence, is really to talk to them as humans, because I think that the data speaks for itself, but allowing them to speak is what's really going to convince you that they're absolutely necessary in any program for Gear Up, because the way that they serve students is uncomparable with any other resource.
Thank you. And I'll just echo that just in terms of the Student Success Agency's willingness to answer questions and dig deep and, about themselves and what they do, but also about what you're trying to accomplish and how you can partner with Student Success Agency to make that a reality and to make that happen. So a true partnership approach to things. And that word is often overused sometimes when we talk about these vendor relationships, but really it's so true with Student Success Agency. It's not a vendor. It truly becomes a part of your team, and they are cheering for you and your students louder than you are even. They're so enthusiastic about helping achieve goals for your organization and for your students. So Marcus, do you want to wrap us up?
Everything they said.
Yeah.
They actually covered pretty much everything. Actually listening to these phenomenal ladies here, they said the word data between themselves 9 times. And you have to track, you have to, and I'm keying in on that word. But those are the percentages. And what we need to remember, though, while we're digging through that data, is those are people.
Mhm.
Those points, percentages are people. Little people, medium people, and big people. But those are all people and kids. And the little kids need the exact same thing the big kids need. Both of them, the needs are the actual same. And those are people who we've been put in charge of. And while you're going through and setting up a conference call, I got a critical question that everyone needs to ask themselves. Do our students and the kids that I'm actually serving have a one-on-one connection with that person that they can have that connection with, and that ear and voice that I keep going back to over and over and over? Do they have that person at school and at home? And I know I ask myself that question, and that's an emphatic no.
Mhm.
That's an emphatic no. And some adults don't have that. And that is very, very important. And I gave some examples of how we were able to intercept a few suicides and help kids out on the weekend who didn't have any food, but they're told their agent, and we were able to go feed the entire family. So it stretches not only at school, but at home as well. So this is a phenomenal program with great benefits. And set up a conference call. And yes, look at that data, qualitative and quantitative. And actually ask yourself that critical questions I just mentioned. Do our students, do our kids have that one-on-one person that they can connect with at home and at school? And if that answer is a no, this is the agency for you. That sounds like a commercial. Y'all might need to hire me.
I know, I think so. We got a little sound bite there.
No, but this is authentic though. This is authentic, and this
It
is why I'm
is.
able to speak passionately to this, because I've actually held the hand of those three kids, and they
Yeah.
told me, "Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Thank you for bringing us our agent."
Well, I think where you started with, it's not data points, it's people, and it's real kids and real futures, and it's real educators trying to do hard work. So there's support for everybody with this program, not just the students, but your team as well. Dawn, you wanted to chime in?
Just very quickly, if you have an opportunity, if you're trying to figure it out, try to get to one of those kickoffs.
Mhm.
Because you will be inspired as an adult professional, just in the presence there, and not only from what's being said, but watching the response that the students get from it also. So if there's an opportunity to catch a kickoff, if you're on the fence, definitely try to get to one of those kickoffs. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the energy is undescribable for everybody involved. Well, thank you so much for sharing these stories and your insights and just your experiences. It's been a very powerful hour together. We're close on time, but I do want to just field a couple questions before we wrap up. And Marcus, maybe this is one that you might be able to best address. So this is from a school-based counselor. And so a lot of what we talked about here is kind of what's happening at the administrative or the district level. You gave some examples of how you're sharing information with schools. Is that typically how you're doing it there in Lancaster? Is the information's coming to you and then you're distributing it to counselors and teachers at the individual schools?
Yes, the agents are directly connected to the counselors at every school. They have a direct link to the counselors. So when they get these troubling messages, it actually goes directly to the counselor, and then she sends a text message to myself and the social emotional counselor for the district, who's actually have the connection with our outside resources, where within a minute or two, if we get an alarming message, we have a team that is actually on contact, and we're actually moving while that agent is actually on the phone with the child. And the agent doesn't get off the phone with the child unless there's a positive message. We're on our way. We spoke with mom. They're about to intervene at this particular time. So we were able to do that within a 5-minute time frame once we get some alarming information such as these suicides.
Wow, that's fast. That's
Mhm.
really great, and so important. Claire?
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in on some of the things that maybe aren't quite so, like such emergencies, right? Obviously, that system is incredible and helpful, but also on the school level for just things that are a little bit smaller. For us, SSA sends the same data and reports that they do to us directly to our school site principals every single month. And so for us, that's really helpful in just fostering more communication with our school admins and allowing them to see, all the improvements and connections that are being made and what their students are looking for help in. As I said before, our staff is two staff to 3,000 students, but our principals are one principal to 3,000 students, right? And we all know how busy the schedules of principals are. So for them, it's nice to just be able to take a few moments every month and really look at what SSA is telling them that their students need. And it just sort of, again, with the bridging the gap, right? To access of just data about what their students are looking for and allowing them to feel more connected to their students in their schools at that level.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for chiming in on that side of things. That's helpful. We are at the top of the hour. I just want to quickly address the question that came in just about training for agents. And the agents they go through a very extensive vetting process. They receive extensive training, and then they have ongoing monthly mentoring and training sessions that they go through. If you go to the next slide, we've got actually a starter kit. That's what we're calling it, where there's a whole lot more information about Student Success Agency. We have an entire video about how the agents are vetted and trained, about implementation at your school, about funding, how student safety is protected, so much more. You've heard the name Michael mentioned a couple times, and many of you may have already had contact with Michael, but Michael's available to answer questions. You can schedule a meeting directly with him, or you can email him there at the email address on your screen. You really can continue your exploration from this webinar right there in that starter kit. We've also got some videos, one I believe right out of Lancaster. We've got some other videos of students and their agents talking, some other educators talking about how the program has worked for them, so you can build on what you heard here from Don and Claire and Marcus today. Have a great rest of your day.